I have an important message for a select few. That's not all of you. This is for a select few of you guys that are listening or watching this. It's for trade business owners that have been around for a while. They understand the frustrations of marketing and being in control or not being in control. Guys, it's 2021 and many of you are marketing yourselves like it's the year 2000. Off the back of a global pandemic, we've seen huge shifts in the market with people turning to service providers they know, like, and trust. There's never been a better time to establish the tools and frameworks in your business to take advantage of these things. These things that will serve you not only now, but serve the business ongoing. Over at Tradie Web Guys, we've recently launched the Elevation Program. It equips businesses with the tools and the programs required to successfully market themselves. It gives you tools to re-engage with your past and present clients whilst nurturing potential clients. It creates assets in your company's name with no proprietary licenses. You own these things 100%. It gives your business a huge head start on the search engines with advanced SEO, and it collates all of the programs and all the services you need into one neat little bundle, including things like web development, website management, email marketing, SEO, Google Ads, loads of different softwares, strategy, support, and a bunch of other things. After going through this program, you'll have all the tools you need to market your business ongoing. You'll have a huge head start in your marketing, and you'll also have a CRM so you can continue to build your database whilst engaging your current customers and re-engaging those customers that you've essentially forgotten about. Marketing tools that you need, and they'll all be in your control. You don't owe anyone anything. You'll be able to dial it up and down essentially as you see fit. So why is this an important time to talk about this? Guys, it's important to know a lot about a little and a little about a lot. Meaning, you want to be in control. You want to know enough to be dangerous. I'm not trying to give you more work here. Essentially, we'll set everything up for you, teach you the basics, and then it's all yours. It's complete transparency. You'll never grow a business past a certain point without marketing. Word of mouth will only ever get you so far. We've spoken about it on the podcast a load of times. At some stage, you need to invest in these things. This is the simplest and most affordable way to do it. For more information, head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/elevation, fill in the form, and let's make 2021 the year that you took control. Today's podcast has been proudly brought to you by Tradie Web Guys. Tradie Web Guys work with tradespeople only on their websites and marketing solutions to help them stand out from their competition. Everything from web design through to SEO, search engine marketing, content creation, you name it, guys. It is a customized solution for trade-based organizations, and it's fantastic. Head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/apply, fill in the form, and let's have a conversation.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Karalynn, welcome back to the Site Shed podcast.
Thanks again for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
All the way from Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeehaw.
The great state of Texas, I'll tell you though. I'm glad I live in Texas now.
Yeah,
no restrictions. We're free,
Oh man, I've had some great times in Texas over the years. It's a good state. So we're here today. We're talking about contracts in the construction industry. This is the second conversation we've had. In the first conversation, we were talking about what should be in your contracts. For you guys that haven't checked that out, do go and listen to it. This is all about, pardon the pun, which I'll explain in a minute, but this is all about helping you guys not get screwed. So we covered off on some really important topics there, which essentially was a step-by-step bullet points of things that you need to consider when going into a contract. When creating a contract. Karalynn's written a book called Quit Getting Screwed. Quit Getting Screwed. Why do I keep screwing that up?
It's got a funny name because it's shocking, right?
And it's a great book, admittedly halfway through it, but it's been kind of a shocking revelation and actually kind of brought back a few experiences that I had back in the day, which I was hoping I'd buried. But anyway, thanks for that. Some
nightmares.
Now I'm going to be back in therapy. Thanks to you.
You got to work through those issues. You can't just bury them.
Anyway, the point being, go listen to episode 1 if you haven't already, because a lot of what we're going to talk about today is going to tie into that. Today, we talk about treacherous contract terms, what to look out for when you're signing someone else's contract. And this really is where the rubber hits the road, I guess, when it comes to you setting yourself up for a world of hurt. So I'm pretty keen to jump into this one. And I know from the half book that I've read already. There's already things in there that made me shake and shudder. So is this? So this is essentially, I suppose, before we get started, this podcast is really designed to go to anybody that is at any point in a situation where they have to sign someone else's contract. Is that right?
Correct. And like in the construction industry, you're either going to draft your own contract or sign somebody else's. And when you're signing somebody else's, you have to realize that there's no set of rules that protect you. There's no set of rules of what can and can't be in a contract. And so, especially at a commercial level, knowing what's in there and knowing the danger provisions, because if you sign the wrong one, it really could put you out of business.
Yeah, and these are things you see all the time, and you read about them in media, and for the better part, I feel like we kind of touched on it in the last episode. It is kind of ignorance to a degree, like it's people not really understanding the severity of these things they're putting their names to. But like you see businesses just crumble for no apparent reason. I hope we can kind of help people alleviate some of these obstacles, with these podcasts that we're doing.
I agree. Well, at least bring attention to the idea that you need to read it. You need to know what it says, and however you do that, don't just sign it blindly, because, like we kind of touched us on this last episode, but bid versus scope. I've seen this take out entire companies.
Right.
People think you give a bid to a GC, they send back a contract that you're hired to do the work that's in your bid, and you are not. You're hired to do the work that's in the scope attached to that contract. Your bid might as well be in the garbage. It never existed. It doesn't matter once you sign that contract. And so really understanding, looking at that scope like it were a new bid and making sure it matches. Like I said, I've seen, go ahead.
It's such a scary dynamic, like the whole reality where they give you, they ask you to bid on a project. You submit your bid, you submit your proposal, and then they send you a contract, which could essentially be completely different.
Correct. Completely. And sometimes intentional and sometimes not. Sometimes the plans have changed, or the specs have changed, or the project manual, which is, like I said, sometimes intentional, sometimes not. But it could be, be the difference of, a couple bucks, or it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Sure.
So, take the time to look at it. It is essential.
So we're going to dive into, and like, so where a bid is the scope the actual contract?
The description of the work in the subcontract you sign is the actual contract.
The description of the work,
which is the scope.
Okay.
And usually it's going to be referenced somehow to that subcontract that you sign, or the contract that you sign. It's either going to be spelled out directly in the contract, or it's going to be like, okay, you're going to do this work that's described in this section of the scope and in this section of the plans, and go here and see all that. Gotcha. And yeah, at that point, definitely you want to go back and check those sections of the plans, because, like I said, they may have been different from the ones you originally looked at when you bid the project. Maybe a lot, maybe a little, but.
So that's what you were saying in the last episode, where you said essentially treat the contract as like you're creating a new bid for it, and see if there's a price difference between the two.
Like you've never seen this before. This is the first time you're going to put a bid on the project, and so you're looking at the contract docs with fresh eyes, just to make sure you don't miss anything.
Yeah, I know it's one of those things, isn't it? Where we touched on this in the last episode too. Like it takes a lot of time doing this, but the amount of grief it can save you.
I know. I agree. It's, a lot of time until, you catch something that's $10,000 or $15,000 difference, or,
sure.
And you realize how time well spent, because this is a dangerous industry. And I've seen a lot of people get hurt a little bit and get hurt a lot by missing this, just because logically it makes sense. I give you a bid. That's what I'm hired to do.
Sure.
And it doesn't make logical sense. It's, legalese.
Is there, we're on a slight tangent. Have you seen any subcontractors, I suppose, when they're going through the bidding process? Have you seen a process that they have where they might take notes on the significant things? And so when the contract is actually issued to them, they can go back and reference those notes Yeah, that would make it faster. Whatever internal process that you have, just to make sure that those same things that you noted are the same. Yeah.
And don't take for granted that they would be.
I remember a colleague, actually one of the guys in our community, had a situation where he got screwed because they upgraded. It was like an air conditioning unit or something without which wasn't in the initial proposal, but it was in the contract or whatever. And it was a significant upgrade, It was the same brand. It was the same brand of product. Like
it's $10,000 more.
Yeah.
Or even in that.
More even.
Yeah, really.
Because it was like a commercial sort of, yeah.
And here's the thing is that, did they do that on purpose or not? I don't know. But it doesn't really matter at the end of the day if it was if it was intentional or not.
I think to be fair, they came to the party with that one because luckily for him, but I think it was a big learning lesson.
Yeah, exactly. How dangerous. Luckily that they dealt with you on that.
And that was just an aircon unit. You can imagine, some of the more bigger.
No, I agree.
Cool. So, okay, sorry to interrupt there.
No.
So we've been through one, bid versus scope.
No, okay. And so the next one is something that when I first read this provision, I'm like, can't be serious. Is that you read your subcontract and it says you're also responsible for the terms of the prime contract, which is the contract between the owner and the general.
What?
Which sitting in front of you, you do not have a copy of.
I was going to say, would you even have that?
No. And here's the thing is that it doesn't matter if you have it or not. If you sign it, you are.
So how do you navigate that? Do you say, oh, actually, I haven't got this contract. Please send it over.
Correct. And so first,
I can send it to my contracts lawyer so she can read it.
Read it, exactly. No, first I try to say, what this provision is kind of like a catch-all. In case somebody forgot something, we can pick it up in this contract. So it's lazy and it's sloppy and it's just got stuck in there. So say, hey, no, I don't want to be responsible for the prime anymore and try to get it taken out. If not, say, hey, send me a copy of it. You can redact the price, but I want to see it because there can be slight differences. Like if your contract doesn't call for liquidated damages, like if you don't finish on time and the prime contract does, well, now you are open to that, even though you didn't knowingly agree to it. So sometimes asking for a copy of it because they don't like to share their general contract is enough to get it taken out.
Yeah, no kidding.
And like I said, most people don't even realize it's in there. So if you ask for a copy, they'd be like, what are you talking about? I saw one yesterday that said, you're agreeing to the terms of the prime. We'll give you a copy if you ask for it, but you have to pay for the copy. I'm like, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. You're going to make me pay for a contract you want to hold me responsible. So know that going in, try to get it taken out. The more we push back on stupid provisions like this, the better off we'll be. That is just...
You have to pay for it. Pay for what? The paper? Like...
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure.
Exactly. And one that I didn't put in here, and it's not in the book because it wasn't prevalent, but it's becoming more and more prevalent. And it's usually on the first or second page. It is a provision that says something like, if it can be reasonably inferred from the plans and the scope and the contract that you should have done that work, then it's included in the contract.
Say that again, sorry.
Okay, so it says, if it could be reasonably, even though it's not explicitly said in the contract or the scope or anything like that, if it can be reasonably inferred that you should have done that work, you're responsible to do that work.
But does that not go against the point of a contract?
Like, yes, exactly. If I have to wait for something and who gets to define what's reasonably inferred?
Right.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
who does define that?
The contractor.
Right.
And so I see this one's coming out. I'm like, you can't sign this contract if they leave it in there because basically it's an open checkbook to say, oh, I reasonably inferred you're going to do that. I reasonably inferred you're going to do that. That's ridiculous. I draw the line there. Usually I just put notes of here's what this means and here's what this means. The last one I reviewed, I crossed it out. I said, you can't sign it if it's in there.
Really?
I just won't let you.
Yeah, I mean, there must be a bunch of things in there that you're like, that's a hard no.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no.
This means this means this. This means you're screwed. Yeah. You're going to lose your house, your family.
just not going to have it in there. And so another provision like that, which is the next one on here, delay damages. And first you got to understand what delay damages are. Either
is that LDs?
Yes.
Yeah.
Liquidated damages, same thing. Is that the owner is trying to make sure the project is finished on time. And to do that, he crams the general contractor into this finish date. And if you don't, there'll be a penalty per day. And of course, then the general contractor crams that down. So those things, delay damages, are based on the schedule you agree to.
Sure.
So don't just think that, okay, I got the schedule. I don't think I can complete it on time, but I'm just going to sign it because, I'm sure I can get extra time later on. No, because whatever is in writing is what's enforceable. And even if they say you'll give you more time later on and it's not in writing, it's not enforceable. And, oh yeah, I'll give you an extra 10 days or I'll give you it. Doesn't matter if they just say it. It's got to be in writing because if you don't finish, and most of these are at least $500 a day.
Right.
And so, and if the owner's going to make it on the GC, then the GC can make it on a sub. And I've even seen some GCs that the owner didn't do it, but the GC just did it on their sub. which is complete BS if you ask me.
Right.
It's just a way to deduct their contract amount, right? Because they're not actually incurring those costs or those damages. But since the subcontractor signed a contract that he couldn't finish on time, I'm going to get a free, couple grand. I'm going to say, he was 10 days late. That's, $5,000. Why not? So another thing to be leery of.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to understand here, I'll be honest with you. I don't get involved with successfully completed projects. I'm only in the ones that people get messed up. So,
sure.
I kind of have a jaded view, and I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that wouldn't do this to other people, but just know that there are some people out there that do.
Yeah.
And I know we also talked about, you have contracts that say you don't get paid for 90 days, right? That's common in your world. And what I can tell you is whatever you sign, that's what you're going to be held to, right? You can't ask for payment before those 90 days. What is prevalent here is pay when paid clauses, or pay if paid clauses, which says, okay, subcontractor doesn't get paid until owner pays general, and then the general pays the sub. And if owner doesn't pay general for whatever reason, subs and lower tiers don't get paid, and there's nothing you can do about it. And so what I tell my
tough one,
guys,
isn't it? Because then, maybe not in the situations of big business, but like a small general contractor, if they haven't got the money, then not that it's your problem, I suppose, but
no. But listen, but what does this do? This puts the funding of the construction project on the subcontractors, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They're putting out the money.
Sure.
They're pay their guys to get their material. They're the one who's extending them credit.
Yeah, sure.
And then they have to wait for something that they have no control over.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing, is not realizing that it's in there when you sign it is deadly, because you could potentially have to do the whole contract before you get paid anything. And so, at some contractor institute, there's some free language on how to try to negotiate that and split the risk, right? Okay, I understand you don't want to take 100% of the risk, but you pay me 50%, or you pay me to file a lien. Give me something so I can keep my doors open. I don't have to finance your freaking project.
I don't know if we have liens over here. Can you explain that?
Okay, so here in the States, and all 50 states have them, is for an unpaid contractor that's improved somebody's property, you can file a lien, which is basically an ownership interest in that property to the extent that you're owed labor and material.
Oh.
And so it's a very valuable tool that creates a lot of leverage, but you have to do it right.
Right.
And unfortunately, in all 50 states is different. Texas is one of the most complicated, but that's the next project I'm actually working on. I have another book coming out in September called Quit Getting Stiffed. It's all about how to get paid. And I'm actually right now in the process of learning all the 50 state lien law. And I will have a subcontractor institute very clearly the instruction how to file a lien for that state, which is not available anywhere.
So a lien essentially gives you a percentage share, stock, whatever, in the owner's property.
Correct.
Which means they can't sell it.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, is that they're good for a limited amount of time, and you gotta file suit, what they call it, to foreclose or enforce the lien. And so you go to court and you say, I'm entitled to this. If the owner still doesn't pay you and you win the judgment, at the end of the day, you could force the sale of the property to get your lien paid.
Wow.
Don't get me wrong. Most of the times the liens just get paid and you don't get the property, but
sure, that
is a great leverage. And
especially if you've done a lot of work, like a renovation, and you've got like $100,000 lien on a $300,000 property.
Exactly. And to have that security. But here's the thing, you got to do it right. You got to know how to do it. It's technical, but it is great leverage. And here's the other thing, is this: as a subcontractor, the owner doesn't know what's going on down the road, right? They're only dealing with their contractor most. And so the sooner you can raise the red flag, hey, I'm not getting paid down here, then the owner can jump in and make sure you're paid. And it's a whole great process, and and notices and all the things. But it really is a powerful tool used properly.
So this next one, sorry, there you go.
I was just going to say, and even if you have a pay when paid clause, you could still file a lien. So,
right. Not
saying you may get paid faster because the owner would pay the general, but we'll see.
So would a lawyer do that for you?
Yeah, yes, I'm actually coming up with, you can get the paperwork on your own. You don't have to have a lawyer, no, but I would consult a lawyer in your state that knows how to do it properly.
Right.
Because if you, an incorrect file lien is more dangerous than not having one at all.
Right.
Because if you do it wrong.
Is that filed through the courts?
When you file it, it's just filed like here where the records are, or deeds, where the deed records are, it's filed there. So if anybody were to go look at the deed history of that property, it would pull up that your lien's there. And so they couldn't sell it with the lien on there. They couldn't transfer it. And so it's really, they couldn't take out another mortgage with a lien on there.
But who approves it? Like, who processes it?
Nobody.
Well, so anyone could just go, I'll put a lien on your property. Here you go.
Yes. And that's why there's great penalties for doing it wrong, right? As long as it's notarized and got the legal description, a clerk is going to file it. Nobody checks it at that point. And so there's a process to remove it if it's done incorrectly, and high penalties and all these things to make sure that doesn't happen.
Probably why we don't have that here.
And there's still, and that's the thing here, is that anybody can file anything against anybody's property. Nobody checks it when it's filed. You have to thereafter do something to fix it, which is what keeps lawyers in business, I guess. One of the things.
America. So the next one is something that is actually quite scary, isn't it? When we're talking about the
I agree. Personal guarantees. And I'm seeing these more and more. Okay, so like you have a company which protects you personally from liability for debts of the company and stuff like that. And so what a personal guarantee does is says, okay, I'm going to set my company aside and I'll be responsible for the debts of the company. So basically, you personally are guaranteeing performance of that contract, which is unreasonable. Across the board, unreasonable. That's one of those hard no's. We're crossing that out. We're not signing that. I'm not going to be personally liable for your construction project.
What was the other one that I read in the book that was similar to that, like the bonds or something?
Bonds. Okay, so here on public work projects, contractors have to get a general contractor has to get a bond to work on public works. And they can require subcontractors to get a bond as well, which that bond says to the general contractor, I, subcontractor, agree that I will complete the work 100% and I will pay all the people that work for me and supply material. Well, in order to get that bond, you gotta sign a personal guarantee and basically pledge all of your assets, personal and company, to the insurance company, the surety that issues the bond, right? Okay, and so this bond is sitting out there, and so if the GC thinks you're not doing the work correctly or didn't perform the contract, they can terminate you and file on the bond for what it would cost to complete your work.
But this is not the general contractor. This is the insurance company.
Correct. Right. But it's not an insurance policy, because in an insurance policy, if somebody filed a claim, they would just pay it. In this situation, if somebody filed a claim on your bond, you have to pay it back.
So is that essentially there to protect the employees? Is that the whole?
The idea of it is to protect the general contractor, to make sure that your scope of work gets done and everybody gets paid. And so say like something unfortunate happens and you go out of business and the general contractor is left high and dry. This protects them from something like that.
So bonds and personal guarantees are hard nose?
Yes. Yeah, unless you're on a federal project, then you have to have one. But yeah, a bond on a private project, absolutely not.
But a bond on a federal project would be
like an airport or army base, or because those projects have got to be bonded, and so you're going to have to get one.
Sure.
Legally. But on a private project, definitely not.
This is the reason. I mean, I don't know if it's exactly the same here, and I'd probably be fair to say it's not. But I know a lot of people or business owners over here will just buy assets in their partner's name or like their wife's name or their kids' names or something, just because they don't. I mean, even with a proprietary limited liability, company set up, they can still come after you for assets and things like that.
Oh yeah, it's the same here. They can still, try to, what they call it here is pierce the corporate veil, or pretend, if they can show you didn't use your company as a company, they can come after your personal assets and whatnot. And then it depends, like in Texas, if you're married, it doesn't really matter because it's community property. So even if it's in your wife's name, the creditor could still get it. But, but anyways.
Don't get married in Texas. Is that the point?
Like there's states that, you have separate property and they can all own their own. But if you own anything when you're married in Texas, it's just y'all. It's not yours. It's y'all. But yeah, so no personal guarantees, no bonds unless it's on a public works federal project. And then another provision that I can't believe is in most of these contracts is something called, like I like to refer to as prior work. So say you're the drywall guy, you show up.
Oh, yeah. I read this last night.
Yeah. And the framing is messed up. Okay. And it's not messed up too bad. So you don't say anything and you just put up the drywall and you move forward. Well, comes later, something is wrong with the framing, not the drywall, but they add you to this lawsuit to cure the defect with the framing. And you're like, I'm the drywall guy, I did nothing with framing. Well, if you go back and read your contract, it said if there was a problem with the trade before you and you don't point it out in writing to the general contractor, it then becomes your work as well, meaning that you are responsible for that other guy's work. And that is absolutely ridiculous. If you got to go out there and watch other trades, what does the general contractor hire you?
Yeah.
And so, at Subcontractor Institute, there's some great language you can suggest to negotiate that says, yes, when I get out there, I'll do an inspection and I'll let you know. But if I miss something, I'm not taking that on as my work, as something I'm responsible for.
Yeah.
Because what happens over here is that's how they get all of the trades in a lawsuit. If something's wrong with the windows that's causing leaking, literally from the concrete guy up will be involved in this lawsuit.
Right.
It's just ridiculous. And this is kind of how they do it. So watch out for that.
Any others?
The last one I wanted to dive into is default and terminate. So these 15-page contracts have all of these requirements, some big, some small. Some of them are daily reports you submit on a daily thing, submittals, all the way from turning in your proof of insurance, everything that's required in the contract. If you don't do the smallest thing, it's considered a default. Okay. And so most contracts have, if you're in default, they got to give you 48 hours notice to fix the default. And if you don't, then you can be terminated. Well, and the other thing is that notice of default doesn't have to be a certified letter from an attorney. It can be a text message. It can be an email that says, hey, you didn't have enough guys out here. This project is going too slow. You need to fix this. And so all of those little things can be considered default. And if you're in default, they don't have to pay you and other bad things can happen. So what I tell my guys, if you get anything in writing that says there's something wrong with your work or you're not out there on time, you don't have enough guys, respond in writing so I can show that, yes, okay, there is this issue. Here's how I'm resolving it. Or no, it's not an issue. And here's why I think it's not an issue. So respond in writing, because what can happen is if you don't cure default, then you can get terminated. And terminated means you're canceled, you're fired, you can't come back to the project or finish your work, which most people think, okay, I'm terminated, whatever. I just won't get paid for the work I've done. That is not the case. Okay, so you get terminated. You're not going to get paid whatever work you've done already, but you've made a promise to whoever hired you that you were going to finish that scope of work for that price, right? If it costs them more to finish your scope of work, you owe that contractor the difference.
Right.
And like 100% of the time, it will cost more than your scope of work. And so then you'll get sued for the difference. And so when you're terminated, try to avoid termination at all costs, because It's not just you walking away from the money you have in the project. It's potentially opening you up for liability. Everybody's got their breaking point of what does this look like? What are the options here? How much is it going to cost me? But really truly evaluate that and know what you're looking at before you let a termination happen or you walk the job or something like that, because it's not just as simple as walking away from what you're owed.
We have this thing over here. I don't know if you guys have it, where it's called retention. Mm-hmm. And the general contractor will essentially hold on to 5% or whatever of what's owed to you for a period of a year, 2 years, whatever they feel like.
Damn.
Well, yeah, and it is damn, because and then they make it so ridiculously hard for you to actually get it.
You might as well just add it to your contract price, because you're not going to get it.
Just write it off. Yeah, exactly. Texas
has something like that, but most states actually don't. Texas has 10% required across the board on all projects that has to be withheld. And it's from 30 days from final completion.
Right.
But still, what I tell my clients is just build in the cost of filing a lien for retainage, because that's the only way you're going to get paid, because you're done with the project. You don't have any leverage. If you miss that 30-day window, if you don't file your lien within 30 days of final completion, it's late and you don't have lien rights. So file the lien for retainage. You get paid directly from the owner, because 10%, if you're getting a 10% profit margin on a project, that's really good. And so
it's huge.
To walk away from 10% of your contract amount, why are you in business? You know what I'm saying? Unless you built it in and plan on having a 20% profit, then losing 10% is, okay. But most people don't. So your retainage is important. Make sure you collect it.
And I think a lot of the guys are like, well, it's going to cost us more to fight it than what the amount is. So there's no point. So the builders is like, perfect.
Exactly. And so, and then I said, just know that going in and increase your contract price.
Yeah. So I don't know. Would that be in a contract? I'm guessing it would have to be retention.
Yeah, it would definitely be. And then when the term should be paid out, and that's probably the way you would go about getting it, is like sue on the contract because they didn't pay the retainage in time.
Right.
But you want to spell out the terms, like every time you're paid, I'm going to withhold such amount for retainage, which is going to be paid at, whatever time upon completion. But I'm sure unless you have laws that say how long it needs to be withheld, you can negotiate that provision too.
Man, I reckon it would be such like an awesome feeling to be able to just, when they come at you with these contracts, just have someone like you in your corner, which replies and just like, here, this is what my lawyer said. They're like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Well, and that's the thing is like, even if I'm,
by the way, I've spoken to all the guys in the lunch shed as well, and they're all going to use the same lawyer. So yeah, so carry on.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what you need, right? Like they don't want to come off the bat and say, "Hey, my lawyer said," but I found out this, or because they don't want to be like overly aggressive because they don't. Oh, he's already got a lawyer. We don't want to hire him, kind of deal. But if I can help you and arm you with the tools of here's what you need to say, and if enough people say it, they'll quit putting this shit in there. Excuse me.
Oh, this has been great. So, I mean, is there anything else you wanted to cover off on in this specific episode?
No, I think I got all the high points. And like I said, if you want to know more about any of this, I'd like teach the classes for free on Subcontractor Institute. Don't get me wrong, you got to put in your email and your information so I can bug you and sell you stuff later.
Spam you.
Not spam, definitely not spam, but offer my paid services if I give you something free. But
I'll have links to all that anyway in the
in the show
notes for this episode, guys. So if you want any information, if you want to learn more about Karalynn, if you want to learn more about the CromeensLawFirm.com,
got it.
If you want to actually get the link to her book, the Amazon link, I'll stick that in the show notes as well, which is Quit Getting Screwed. If you want to get access to the Contractors Institute, then I'll put links to that in there as well. Would you say it's useful for people that aren't based in the US?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Because these same provisions are going to be in your contracts as well, and to know what to look out for, to know that these things might be in there and to look out for them and have somebody that is familiar with your area of law, your contracts, to look at it is priceless.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure this is not just a U.S. thing. I'm sure this is a global issue.
Yeah, I don't know how true it is, but I've heard that our law systems aren't that dissimilar.
Yeah. I just can't imagine that they would be. Because obviously we are based on somebody else's law. Our law, most of the United States is English
British,
law.
Yeah.
Except for Louisiana, which is French. So
is that right?
Yes. Which is our neighboring state. I'm gonna have to hire a lawyer there if I want to practice there because I'm not taking the French bar.
Come on.
Yeah.
Putain.
Forget about it. I mean, everything else I could pretty much learn, but not French.
All right. Well, this has been great. Thanks so much for your time.
Right, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a great time.
And guys, if you've had any experiences, bad or good or bad, with these sort of things that we've been discussing, I'd love to hear it. So head across to the Facebook community there, and when you see this come out, post some comments when you see this come through. It'd be good to hear your experiences and how you've navigated turbulent waters.
Awesome. Everybody needs to hear your experience so they can learn from it and not make the same mistake you did.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that's a wrap.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Ciao. Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to thesiteshed.com where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from this show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.